What does this all say about what's going on with masculinity at the moment? Because I've said this a few times on the show, but when you look at the stats around suicidality amongst men, when you look at mental health issues amongst men, when you look at some of the influencers that men are now drawn to more than ever, that are offering a new vision of masculinity, there's clearly some kind of transition, something going on in society at the moment as it relates to what it is to be a man.
Right.
You said this thing about beta male earlier on. No one wants a beta male.
Right.
Well, it feels like there has been a narrative that has encouraged a bit more beta maleness in society. And we're seeing a bit of like a counter movement. I've had so many women, some of which have been on the show, say to me that they've got a young son, and they are confused about the advice they should be giving their young son in such a world.
I get tons of women who write to me and ask me sort of I'm paraphrasing, where are the bold men, right? I go to a place, I'm looking super, ready to meet people. I'm easy to look at and no one approaches me. Well, if you inculcate over many generations that if I approach you and say, my God, my name is God, you look lovely, what a beautiful dress, that's a compliment becomes a form of compliment rape, then is it surprising that I may be a bit ambivalent in approaching you? I mean, I often joke that given some of what is now considered #MeToo, Italy should cease to exist because the whole country is #MeToo, right? What do I mean by that? Italians, stereotypically, of course, are seducers. They pursue women. I mean, women will say, I love Italian guys, how they approach. Now, we're not talking about, being persistent to the point that they're harassing you, that they're pinning you down physically. But there is a dynamic of courtship whereby men who are bold, men who approach, men who take chances, who are confident, are going to get the pretty girl. Well, now imagine if you create a dynamic for all sorts of reasons, one of which is radical feminism, the other one of which is to pathologize half of humanity called men through the label of toxic masculinity. No, it's called sexiness. A guy who jumps into a building to save a puppy and he's called a fireman, that's what we fantasize about. That's not toxic masculinity, that's masculinity, right? And so a lot of women will write to me and say, where are those men, Professor? Well, those men are too afraid to come out. I'll give you a couple of examples, okay? At my university, we now have a mandatory sexual training module that we have to take. Otherwise, we can't continue, right? It's part of like, you have till October 15th to get the refresher. Because until my benevolent, kind employer taught me how to speak to women, I was clueless. So the first 57 years of my life, I walked around as a Middle Eastern savage, not knowing how to interact with women. Of course, I'm being sarcastic, right? But then my benevolent employer came along and through very, very cute, condescending and patronizing cartoon vignettes, they teach me how to act. So, a compliment that is in the wrong context could be a form of sexual violence. So, for example, you're walking down the street and you see a guy complimenting a woman, and it appears that she's not welcoming that compliment. Is that sexual violence? And so I will first, just to test the algorithm, say no. And then it comes out, ooh, I understand why you might be, but that is a form. Are you with me?
Yes.
So now I'm 59 with a big personality. This kind of bullshit doesn't get to me. That's why I speak openly and publicly to the chagrin of all of academia. But the 21-year-old who doesn't have that same strength of personhood, do you think he's going to think twice before at the next party, walking up to a girl, mustering up all his courage to ask her if she wants a coffee? Of course he is. So I think that's where that problem of dynamic comes from. And I'm now going to share a personal story with one of my brothers, which is also in the happiness book, which speaks to when you're the opposite of the non-bold, timid guy. One of my brothers has been in Southern California since 1984. He became very, very successful and wealthy, was an Olympian judoka. He represented Lebanon in the 1976 Olympics. The reason why that's relevant is because physically he's very dominant, but my brother is 2 feet tall. Obviously not, but he's shorter than me. He's okay.
How tall are you?
I'm like 5'6", 5'7".
And
he's maybe 5'3",
okay,
but a bulldog.
Yeah.
Right. I always like to say, just because then it makes it easy, I say I'm Messi's height, so that makes it easy. Okay. So he's not Messi's height. He's shorter than Messi's height. He's shorter than Maradona. Right. So, but he walks like he's 7 feet tall. Okay. So we used to, in the early 90s, I would come visit him. He used to live in Newport Beach, where we are now. And we'd go to clubs. I'm single at that point. And my brother would say, all right, Gad, we're going to play the game. I'm like, oh, his name is Dave. I said, no, David, I'm not in the mood. Find the most beautiful and unattainable girl here. Oh, come on, man. I don't want to do this. Do it. Okay. All right. So I look around. So now I want to find not only the prettiest girl, I want to find an impediment to you getting her. What's an impediment? A really domineering looking man that she's with. Therefore, that makes it even less likely that you can get her. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, David, I found her. The girl over there with the high heels in the middle of the dance floor. That's the one? You sure, Gad? Yes, that's the one. Okay. He stands there. Dominant, tattooed guy goes to the bathroom. David, in great white shark mode, goes up to the girl. She, with her high heels, he's coming up to here.
I just.
Okay. Ha ha ha. I hear them smiling. He comes back to me, complete cold. Says, she'll call me tomorrow. Bullshit, David. No way. Zero chance. It's not happening. Next day. Come. This is kind of an Arabic thing. Come. Hi, David. It's Candy. We met yesterday, the thing. I'm looking forward to meeting you. How did he do it, Stephen? He did it because testicles this big. He's 7'2" in his aura. Now, you might say, well, yeah, boy, does it add a lot of inches, metaphorically, when you have Ferraris and so on. But there's a more general story here. He owns the world. He walks like he owns it, right? But he's not of great. So if you ask women, yeah, it'd be great if I'm 6'2" and I walk big, but I could be 6'2" and very meek and very tepid and very beta, or I could be 5'7" and I'm messy. Most are going to go for messy. So that's what I mean, by the way, when I say that mating is a compensatory choice. Compensatory means that it, to your earlier point about mate desirability, we are judged on a basket of goods. If it were that we're only judged in a non-compensatory way, meaning, so for example, if it were that women say, I always go out with the tallest guy, then there's no way for me to compensate for that. My humor won't get me higher score. My looks won't get me, my education, my accomplishment. I'm dead because there are a lot of taller guys. But if the way you choose me is as a function of how I score on a basket of goods, then I might have a shot. So that's why I tell people, by the way, that even though we all score poorly on some things, but there's a whole bunch of other things that is within our possibility to improve. I guarantee you, for all that you are, if you improve on assertiveness, ambition, if your vocabulary changes so that when you sit at a party, people can judge you, by the way, within the first few sentences that you say. Just your elocution, the vocabulary that you use, the thoughtfulness of your answers. I can very quickly judge where you are, where I can put you in the pigeonhole. So there are ways. You know what? Why don't you crack a book and read a bit, right? Why don't you stop playing video games?
On this point of masculinity, just further upstream a little bit, we talked about men approaching women. Now, I have to present the counter narrative to this because I don't think most men understand what it is to be a beautiful woman and what they go through on a daily basis. This ITV made a piece, I think 7 days ago, I saw it on X or Twitter, which showed what it's like to be a beautiful woman walking down the street.
Yeah.
This was only 7 days ago. There's been a variety of different videos like this, but I'll just play it for you so you can see.
Hello, what's going on here?
I'm filming undercover alone in Cardiff, where police recently announced a decrease in violence against women. Within seconds, a group of men approached me. This guy didn't respect my personal space.
I don't mean to be rude or anything, but I saw you. I had to say hello. You look nice.
I'm a fan of my brand.
That's fine.
The guy in the black t-shirt sees me up ahead and speeds up to get next to me. And like many others, he overstays his welcome.
I think I'll be okay.
20 people approach me in just 2 hours.
Now, I don't think men realise that's the nature of what a woman goes through. So in the context of this conversation about, we do have to be on the front foot if we are going to find a mate. When you understand that that's what that beautiful woman that you're thinking about going up to has already gone through, it does change your,
I got you, but I've got a ready deployed answer for that. Life is about modulation, right? Saying the right thing in the right way at the right time, right? I'm sort of paraphrasing a quote of Aristotle, which in the happiness book, I have a whole chapter that is going to address your beautiful woman story. So I talk about the inverted U. Does that ring a bell? Do you know what that is? The inverted U?
I can imagine it on a graph.
On a graph, but not this way. That
sorry.
way.
Yeah. The other way, like a hill.
Right.
Yeah.
So the inverted U is basically the mathematical representation of something that certainly the ancient Greeks taught us long ago, but they weren't the only ones to say this. Everything in moderation, right? So Aristotle, in his golden mean argument, said, look, if you have, let's say, a soldier who's very cowardly, meek, lacking courage, that's not good. If you have a soldier who is so bold, rash, reckless in his risk-taking, that's not good either. So too little is not good, too much is not good, and the sweet spot is in the middle. So in the happiness book, I have an entire chapter whereby I argue that everything in life, the number one universal rule of optimal flourishing is to find the sweet spot, irrespective of any context that you're talking about. And then I demonstrate it through a bewildering number of examples at the neuronal level, at the individual level, at the societal level. Okay. So now let's apply that principle to here, right? Those guys are at the other end of the curve, right? Knowing when to act in the right way at the right time in the right measure. That they're not doing that, because the likelihood of that beautiful girl, when you come up and act like a rather harassing buffoon in that context, of her saying, you know what, I'm sold. Let's have massive sex behind that tree right now, right? Therefore, we know that statistically speaking, that approach is never going to work. It's done for no other purpose than to harass. Whereas when I'm at a party where we are supposed to be mingling, and I come up to you and I say, forgive me, I hope you don't mind, I just want to say, gorgeous dress. Does that seem like what I just said is similar to how they're acting? So life is about modulation, and those guys are certainly not modulated.
Obviously, there's a bunch of things that are clearly violations there of everything you've just said about the right place, the right time. They look drunk. It's very late. She's alone. So she's in a position of vulnerability in many respects. So rolling up to her in such a way is, but from the male perspective, you said the probability of getting a good outcome there is so low. But from the male perspective they're probably thinking, listen, if the probability is 0.0001,
why not?
I'll take it. They're probably thinking that.
Well, by the way, yeah, perhaps, but if you were an empathetic person, you'd say the fact that she may feel threatened is enough reason not to do it.
Yeah.
Therefore, to me, they're all assholes.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.